whenever he does bring up Shakespeare and Stand from the beginning, you could tell, okay, this is clearly a guy who obviously did not understand it. Like when he starts criticizing, for instance, the presentation of what is it, Caliban in his Tempest, right? The Tempest. It's true that the way the Caliban is presented is ultimately there is like what we consider to be like very sort of crass racial stereotypes where, you know, he's supposed to be this rapist, right? This is the whole kind of like undertone for the whole conflict with Prospero. But he says a lot of things, Caliban does, that are very, very modern. It's very shocking that someone in the 1600s could be writing something like this. When Caliban says, you took away my language for me. The only reason why your language is of any benefit to me is that I could curse you with it. There's so many passages like this that modern people would very much sympathize with, in the same way that it's true that there's an anti-Semitic portrayal in Merchant of Venice. But at the same time, by the time you get to the disgusting nature of The Merchant, you have so many speeches that are just wonderful, that are memorable, that are things that are way beyond their time. And you have to be able to appreciate that, right? I mean, this is the whole point of like difficult reading. And to pass this off as like nobility, right? I'm not going to do this. And by the way, you can't call me stupid or lazy either, because that's racially coded too. And by the way, I'm going to be the one that's foisted on top of everybody else, is like, you have to look up to me. So everybody else doesn't feel threatened by me, essentially, you know, the people that are really at the top. You know, I do think there is a structural kind of thing happening here where, you know, it's all very intentional. Everything from the X in the name to the performativity when he's out there, to the kinds of very sneaky ways that he tries to disarm critics without even dealing with any actual arguments at all.
I'm not going to speak to Shakespeare now, because my Shakespeare knowledge is, even though I actually took courses in college on Shakespeare, I enjoyed it. My knowledge at this point is next to near zero. It's the kinds of sweeping judgments just based on nothing. So he attacks Othello for being racist. I ask myself the question, okay, he says Othello is racist because of its depiction of the Moor, M-O-O-R, Othello. I ask myself a simple question. Paul Robeson was a very learned person. He knew his Latin, he knew his Greek, he was valedictorian of his class at Rutgers, and he was, by any reckoning, a very impressive guy, not just in the fields that people know him for, namely sport. And it's said he knew at least 15 languages. So I mention this because he's an extremely smart and accomplished person. One of his main sources of pride was his portrayal of Othello. His portrayal of Othello, in case you don't know, he was still, to this day, the longest running Shakespearean play in Broadway history. His depiction of Othello. He did Othello twice. He did once in the 1930s. Apparently, it was not a good performance, and he wasn't happy with it. And then he decided to play Othello a second time. And the second time was apparently very well done. It wasn't top. His co-star, who played Desdemona, was Uta Hagen. Uta Hagen was a great actress of her day, great stage actress of her day. She was married to Jose Ferrer. And Jose Ferrer, who was also a great actor, he played, who's the one? Oh God, my memory with names. The guy, who's the character who fools Othello?
Iago?
Yeah, he plays Iago. And I once listened to Uta Hagen talk about Robeson's Othello, And she said he wasn't a great actor, but he was good. She said he had incredible stage presence. When he came out on stage, it was that, for lack of a better word, that charisma, you know? So, by the way, he had a long-standing affair with Uta Hagen. That's a separate story. In any event, if the character of Othello, if it was so racist, I ask myself the question, why did Paul Robeson want to play him? Robeson, as you might know, but probably don't, because he's also a figure of his time, he's been forgotten. He had a film career. He did, for example, The Emperor Jones on film. And then he dropped out of film. He said the roles are too stereotyped, too racist. I'm not going to do any more films. And he dropped out. He did make a couple later, but they were political films like Proud Valley, about the Welsh miners. So why would he take a role which, according to Kendi, is so transparently racist? It's just a stupid thing to say. I want to underline, emphasize, boldface. It's a stupid thing to say, to reduce Othello to just being racist. End of story. Let's move on. This is not a subtle mind at play. It's not a nuanced mind at play. It's an idiot speaking. And it just fills me, it makes me cringe. Not for him. It makes me cringe for all of these fake white woke liberals who sing his praises. These fake white woke liberals who hand out all the awards to him, the Pulitzer Prize, the MacArthur Genius Prize. They're so totally, if Kendi's a moron, they're so totally full of shit because they know this is crap. Of course they know it's crap, but they want to show how liberal they are because Kendi is so cool with his dreads. And his X in his name. So they feel so cool, so hip. Same thing with Ta-Nehisi Coates. If Ta-Nehisi Coates, his name was Henry Smith, nobody would be interested in him. Really, it's the fact. The name, Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, goes to Aspen to speak with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he calls him T. He's so hip, down with the hood, Jeff. You know, it's all so cringy. That's one of the only things I like about the new generation. Their use of the word cringe and cringy.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I think that's going to stick around, as will the word cope, right? Like a coping mechanism for anything in life.
We used coping mechanism in my day.
But now cope is just kind of like a noun, right? It's not a verb. It's like that's a cope. That's a cope. Cope. Sometimes you just see like a one-word reply on Twitter to something somebody might post.
I never knew that. No, cringe. I like. It's also cringe to see what goes on with the hoopla surrounding him, watching these white moderators drooling at his every word, his every idiotic word.